Board, Dexter Justice. But when the boss calls, you've got to attend to the boss. So the commissioner of TDOT was visiting, and Steve and Dexter with the commissioner, but they sent even better presenters. John Barrett, and we in the city of Kingsport have had a great long relationship with both of these. John is in Region 1, so Knoxville area. It stretches down to Sweetwater, over to Rockwood area, all the way up to Mountain City. All the construction that you see go on rolls up within his organization. So it's a huge responsibility that he has. And one thing that amazes me from the city of Kingsport's perspective is he knows the details of our projects. He comes and meets, and I'm sure he does that throughout that large region as well. If you can imagine the amount of work in Sevier County, Knox County, Blount County, all the other areas, that's a huge ask, and he does a great job with it. John is a graduate of University of Tennessee. That's John's alma mater in civil engineering in 1995, and has had a long career with TDOT, I think mainly based in the Knoxville office, the Region 1 office. And joining John is Trampas Grindstaff, who is a native of Upper East Tennessee, I guess Carter County, is that right? And one interesting thing I see about Trampas that adds a lot of value, especially in Upper East Tennessee, is he spent 16 years as a geotechnical engineer with a consulting firm in Southern California. So that's an expertise you don't get a lot of times. And so his reach within the construction side of TDOT is more focused on Upper East Tennessee. So they just, if John is Region 1, I can't think of actually what the area name is up here, but Sullivan County is District 17. So he is very familiar with all the construction projects. Like John, he's a civil engineering graduate of the University of Tennessee as well. So please welcome them with a good Kiwanis welcome. Yeah.
Sorry. You guys hear me okay? Back in the back there. All right. Good. All right. Good deal. And which one was it? All right. Again, guys, I'm Trampas Grindstaff. Go Vols. Big ball game tonight, by the way. So we'll make it quick so we can get out of here and get ready for that. Again, I think Michael Thompson mentioned something about eating all the tomatoes, or John hit them, so you guys wouldn't be throwing anything at us, especially for construction updates here. I'll start with what's currently going on. Resurfacing. You guys haven't seen us out maybe on 36 Fort Henry Drive here recently, but this is the current one that's been let this year. Summers Taylor at about $4.5 million, and will be completed by September 30th. This covers State Route 36 and 357, Fort Henry and Airport Parkway. So we're going to, the contractor is going to get out on 357, hopefully within the next week, if everything goes as scheduled, which nothing does in construction, as y'all know. But we'll be seeing a lot of activity out there next week. Work this thing. 36, we're over here on Fort Henry. You guys might have seen us. We're working at some of the signalized intersections right now. They'll be replacing, I think it shows maybe 46 curb ramps or installing. That's our ADA compliance work on this route. And we're going to probably have crews doing paving operations week after July the 4th. And I know that's something Kingsport to be concerned about our work hours with the summer events coming, and we'll work directly with you guys on planning accordingly. That's all night work. State Route 75 here in Sullivan County, over at the directly in front of the airport. That's another Summers Taylor project let last year at nearly about 6.7 million. Summers Taylor also the prime contractor, and that's also to be completed at the end of September if all goes as planned. That work is basically for roadway widening, utilities, curb and gutter, and we're also doing some new signals on that project. Basically right at the Bell Street and Airport Circle pulling in, it says Airport Parkway. We're not doing another one there at 75 where it intersects with 357. But Muddy Creek Road will also be a signalized intersection. So this will help mitigate some of the traffic congestion, turning movements, FedEx facilities in that area, a lot of heavy traffic, obviously with the airport too, and growth in our community. So that project's in phase 3, final phase, and looking like we should finish on time. Northbound direction has been widened, and curb and gutters in. We'll do the same on the other side with utilities. That's southbound coming into Johnson City, and finishing up the signals and giving travelers adequate time to adjust to do new traffic signals. They'll flash for a couple weeks before they go active again in September, hopefully. Last but not least, for Current and Sullivan County, again, you guys I'm sure aware of and how it impacts traffic here locally. We apologize in advance and after for that. I know this is closed State Route 93 down on a full weekend, and unfortunately we're going to do something similar soon, and again a third phase. If anybody has specific questions at the end, we can maybe get some dates, guesstimated dates, I'll say. This Summers Taylor project, this is the bridge repair over the South Fork of the Holston and right near Eastman. Again, Summers Taylor contractor, awarded in August of 22, but there was issues with starting the project due to an adjacent project having lane closures, which was over Shipley Street, another bridge repair that we did. And again, then we were into some ecology restrictions with barn swallow nesting, so pushed the time out again. So project completion on this one, again, is next year, end of March, and everything looks pretty good at this point in time. And this is a little over $5 million project. Obviously, new concrete deck surface across the entire structure. Bridge gets widened a little bit by expanding where the parapet outside exterior wall set. They were in a few feet originally when it's built in 63. This will get a new pavement, markings, and then we'll make it pretty underneath for all the fishermen when we blast the steel and repaint all that. So it's currently in phase 2 of 3, as I said, and then so we'll be looking at finishing off this center portion, which is the phase 2 construction reinforcement, rebar and concrete, getting that ready for the switch into phase 3, the final phase, which takes a little bit longer than the center. The center is a little bit quicker, and we talk about not a complete shutdown of traffic on 93 for when we place the concrete on this one. We'll be working with the guys at East Fork to talk about what direction we're probably going to restrict for a day or so to get the concrete in safely on that. Flow will be a little bit better. But I think that's about it for construction. And we'll address some questions later.
Yeah, we'll wrap up those things. Thank you very much, Trampas. And it's Brian. Thank you. Brian said, I'm John Barrett. I'm the manager of legislative projects in the 24 County Region 1 area of Upper East Tennessee, and as a native of Upper East Tennessee, more specifically the Tri-City area. It's always good to get out and come talk to good folks like yourself about not only projects that we have up and coming that will soon be turned over to Trampas and his folks to carry over into construction. Also good to get up and talk about some of the initiatives that we have going on at the department currently. One of which, you know, if you know a lot of government agencies use a lot of acronyms. I may be spewing out some acronyms here in a little bit, but I'll do my best to dive into those. We're guilty of using those a lot at the department, but I will dive into some of those and I'll explain exactly what those mean. one of which is known as IPD, or Integrated Program Delivery. You may be asking, what in the world does that mean exactly? Integrated Program Delivery is a new initiative at the department whereby we're undertaking a significant project management approach where we're also utilizing our project teams. We're also utilizing exactly what they bring to the table each and every day in order to be able to leverage their knowledge, their wisdom, their experience, to ultimately maximize our opportunities and deliver projects more efficiently. So, key word there, our goal is to deliver projects more efficiently. What does that mean exactly? Well, it's something that we desire to do and something that the public should desire that we do. And that's ultimately, in a nutshell, delivering projects on schedule and within budget. And one of the ways we're going to help accomplish that mission is by through a new evolution of philosophy at TDOT regarding how we fund and deliver projects. And that is on the screen now. TDOT's 10-year project plan. How many of you are familiar with the term 10-year plan? You folks. If I were to say, how many of you are familiar with the 3-year plan? How many raise their hand? About the same amount. So what's the difference exactly? All right. So as you can see on the screen, the 10-year project plan, if you look right down here at the bottom, we can see this was recently published just less than 6 months ago, December 18th of 2023. So ultimately, what does the 3-year plan have to do with that? Well, the 10-year project plan, I can tell you, first of all, is basically our roadmap for how we're going to deliver projects over the next 10 years. Traditionally, the department, and will continue to do so because the 3-year project plan, aka the budget, is a subset of the 10-year plan. Additionally, we'll continue to do that. The department will submit a 3-year project plan to the governor and General Assembly for approval each and every year in support of the overall state budget. So why the need to go to a 10-year project plan? First and foremost, our current administration has a desire, which we should always do, to be transparent. That's a key word I'm going to use over the next few minutes, to be transparent with regard to overall departmental goals. Looking out, we're casting the net out, so to speak, and obviously one of those goals is projects. So think of it in terms of the plan, the roadmap, as I mentioned just a minute ago, being more transparent with projects over the next 10 years and expectations for those projects. So go back to the 3-year plan for a minute. As I said, submitted to the General Assembly every year for approval. Well, what's happening? Well, if you think of the 3-year plan, think of it as, and I know I don't have a slide to show it here, but focus on the top lines up here, if you would, for a moment. The department has budgeted major projects. As I said, I'm the manager of legislative projects. I'm going to use an East Tennessee term because I'm from Upper East Tennessee. Think of it as the big honking projects, right? The big widening projects, the reconstruction, the interchanges. Used to do a lot of bypasses, things like that. The big expensive fund projects, right? Budget those projects in 3 phases. We've always traditionally been a pay-as-you-go state. If you look at the top line up there, preliminary engineering, kicking things off, preliminary design, getting through environmental approvals. The second one, hard to build anything unless you've got the property to do it, right? Purchasing the property, right away, appraisal, acquisitions, also coordination for utility relocation. And then where the big money is, third phase, construction. So if you were to look at a 3-year plan, on the department's website, look at the 3-year plan, what you would see along what we call the y-axis, if you will, the counties, the projects, and then you see in those 3 columns. Let's just use, for example, fiscal years. I'm going to just use years as an example. The first column, year 1, fiscal year 24. Second column, fiscal year 25. Third column, fiscal year 26. And we'll just take an example project. We'll call it Project A in B County. Traditionally, what you would see is first year, preliminary engineering budget, right? Let's get off and rolling in that first fiscal year. Reasonably, what you should expect to see sometime around maybe year 3 on a big honking project, maybe year 4. What's next? We're getting through that stuff. What's next? Right away. Should be seeing that, right? Within some reasonable expectation. Okay? So one of the things we took on was take on all comers approach over the years. We'd start a project, start another project, another project, another project, in hopes that right away funding would come. Or maybe a project was far enough along, we said, okay, take on more projects, in hopes that construction would come. The reality of it is we ended up with a great backlog of projects over the years. But with revenues essentially flat for the most part of the years, with the exception of a bump a few years ago under the Improved Act, revenues remain relatively flat. We had this great backlog of projects and no way which we could reasonably address all those within the foreseeable future. So having said these things, took a step back and took a look. Over the past few years, we've had some challenges also as well that compounded that issue. How many of you have been to the grocery store or Walmart lately? How many of you went Saturday and you're going back this Saturday thinking, wonder how much this or that has gone up since last week? That's how fast inflation's occurring, right? We've noticed that when we go to McDonald's, other places as well. Well, guess what? No surprise, it's also hit the transportation industry as well. The cost of projects, the cost of materials, the cost of our construction projects just in recent years has gone up exponentially. State of Tennessee, what else is happening? State of Tennessee. A lot of folks are moving to Tennessee, right? On a daily or a weekly basis, right? We look around, we see our population growing. We see folks moving here from other states quite a bit. It's great. What does that do to us from a transportation standpoint? We look at our existing infrastructure, more and more traffic on our roads. From a maintenance standpoint, costs increase, right? From a need standpoint, we could expect also capacity projects will be coming our way now and in the near future, right? And then last but not least, what did we say a minute ago? Revenue is essentially flat for the most part, right? So having said these things, we want to be what with regard to long-term goals as a department? What's that big word? It begins with a T and ends with transparent. We want to be transparent with regard to long-term goals. If we as a department are going to be transparent with regard to long-term goals, our projects, one of the first things we have to do, if you look under the guiding principles of the 10-year plan, we have to take on a culture. If you can see this line here, I'm going to go ahead and read it. Of what gets started gets what? We have to take on a culture. Not be a department that takes on all comers. We have to instill that culture of what gets started gets what? What gets started gets finished. Think about it for a minute. If we're going to do that and be a department of what gets started gets finished, we have to look at our projects and the programs, legislative, paving, state industrial, you name it, safety. If we're going to do that and be successful, we have to take on fiscally constrained plans and projects, much of which will be accomplished through that project management culture that I talked about a minute ago. Transparent, what gets started gets finished, fiscally constrained. Think about it another way. If you're going to do those things, one of the things that we have to do is knuckle down and get in there and find out what are the needs of the state at this time, right? So, we undertook an enhanced evaluation process in the 10-year plan, which I'll talk about momentarily. But with that, there were some guiding principles that we used as a foundation or starting point. Can everybody see these okay? I'm going to go ahead and read them, but can you see these 4 bullet points that I have right here? Okay, so I'm going to go through them pretty quick. Some of the guiding principles that led to the evaluation process in the 10-year plan. Number 1, as I said a minute ago, we're a pay-as-you-go state. We're also a fix-it-first state. We're going to continue that trend going forward. It's a good way of being good stewards of not only our existing assets and maintaining those, but it's also a good way of being good stewards of our funds. Prioritize funding for system preservation. In the 10-year plan, with that money going forward, fix-it-first state, we're going to continue to fund to those levels. We look at existing bridges, look at bridge repair, right? Can we fix it first? Look at our roadways. Resurfacing program is a big, big program within the department. One of the things I'll tell you, I don't have a slide up here that shows it, but in the 10-year plan, 55% of the funding over the 10 years is going to your major projects, your big, big projects. The 45 goes into your program projects, again, the resurfacing, the safety, those types of projects as well. So it's pretty even balanced across the state. The next bullet point supplements what I just said. Balance urban and rural investments across the state is another guiding principle of the 10-year plan. Oftentimes when we think of our urban areas, what do we think of? Knoxville, right? Nashville, Chattanooga, Memphis. We see other areas growing in the more urban type areas. But we have to realize also, we have 95 counties across the state. And for the reasons I mentioned, a lot of those rural areas keep growing and growing and growing for the reasons I mentioned. It's imperative that we balance the urban and rural investments across the state. Having said that, one of the things that we did not want to do, we want to be able to address the urban congestion issue without taking the funds from the rural communities. Also, one of the things we don't want to do is continue to increase our gas on the 10-year plan, increase the gas tax. This next bullet point, talk about that a little bit. Fully leverage our federal funds that we receive, statewide partnerships, and public, that's hard to say, 3 P's in a row, right? Public-private partnerships. I'm going to explain a little about that in a minute. To help TMA, another acronym I'm going to explain. To help TMA funding deliver the most projects possible. Who in here knows what TMA is? TMA. Jason Carter knows. Who else knows? Close. Very close. Very close, but not very close, but not really. Jason will tell us. Transportation Modernization Act. Right. Okay. So what is the Transportation Modernization? It was on the screen up there a minute ago when I had the 10-year plan slide up. Transportation Modernization Act. Very good, Jason. Historic piece of legislature. Very recent. 10-year plan came about in December of 2023, just a few months prior to that in April of 2023. We passed the Transportation Modernization Act. Historic in nature, accomplished several things. Number one of the things it helped do, of course, as many of you know, the department receives funding from dedicated revenue. Vehicles, right? Registration taxes. Gas tax, correct? What are we continuing to see more and more of on our roads? What type of vehicles? Electric vehicles, right? So one of the things that the Transportation Modernization Act sought to do is to create parity between electric vehicles and combustion engines, right? In addition to that, it helped us enter into that public-private partnerships. What is that exactly? It's also 3 P's in a row. It's also known as P3. P3 essentially is we had to go to the legislature to be able to engage and enact with private development, for example. We see this happen in other states where DOTs enter into those with private developments to build what we know as choice lanes. You might here know what a choice lane is. Well,
It's a choice that you pay with.
there you go. That's what we're looking at, yes. The general purpose lanes, these would be in addition to the general purpose lanes. It wouldn't be the use of an existing lane, say on an interstate in an urban area. It would be an additional lane that serves the purpose of a driver would know well in advance based on demand. Driver would maintain a certain speed. You would know well in advance with the technology that we have today on our roadways and interstates. There would be a fee that would be based on demand that one would choose to pay. A little different, well, I'll say this, a lot different than a toll. A toll, guess what? You pay it, right? Choice lane, you have the choice, right? But we would interact, the developer on the front end would fund, build, maintain it, use the revenue off of patch potholes, et cetera. Of course, the state on the front end, and that's where I'm going next with TMA funding. In addition to, the department receives, again, flat revenue for several years for the foreseeable future. That's what we're going to see. 1.2 billion a year, right? You multiply that over the 10-year plan, 1.2 times 10 is what? In addition to all the things I mentioned in the TMA just now, a general fund transfer of $3 million additional dollars comes to the department for spending authority over the next 10 years. 12 plus 3 gives us 15 million, right? So a lot of that TMA money off of that was absolutely necessary to help partner to build the choice with the choice lanes, but also the reason mentioned here at the bottom. Go back to something I said a minute ago. One of the challenges we face: exponential inflation over the past several years, right? When we look at TDOT's most recent 3-year plan and the estimates associated with those projects, no matter what phase they were in, I know you can't see this in here, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it to you. One of the main points of methodology of the 10-year plan was for us to recost, rebudget, and fund all remaining phases of the 3-year plan. You can see this number right here. $519 million of that TMA funding. One of the things we want to do is put the TMA funds to work quickly. Goes back to one of the things I was saying, we want to deliver projects more efficiently. What gets started gets finished. The 3-year plan, the projects in the 3-year plan, we're going to get those on the ground. An additional $519 million was needed out of that to be able to cover the increased cost of those projects in the 3-year plan. Okay. So having said that, we're going to the next slide. All right, everybody with me so far? All making sense? All right. So we're a schedule-driven organization. What I can tell you is we're also a data-driven organization. We talk about prioritization. Certainly one of the things I mentioned is that enhanced evaluation process. By being data-driven, it goes back to accomplishing one of the major goals of the department. When we're data-driven, right, we're able to make decisions that are more transparent, more objectivity in the project selection. So what I will tell you is over here on the left side of the screen, I know it's very hard to see, all the projects. The number I've been given is roughly equates to between 1,000 and 1,100 projects were evaluated as part of the 10-year plan process. Projects of all shapes and sizes and types. We can see as it passes through the phone, again, one of the core aspects of decision-making 10-year plan was TDOT's guiding principles. The guiding principles that we see in TDOT's 25-year long-range transportation plan were sort of the foundation for some of those data-driven decisions. And then ultimately, passing through the funnel, being evaluated. Again, data-driven decisions, we end up with a 10-year project plan. We can see those core aspects of TDOT's guiding principles here on the left. Again, data-driven measurables that were defined to be able to make decisions, objectivity, transparency again. And then in the center of the screen, some additional aspects that assist with decision-making. What is the project's overall performance? Cost is very easily defined in terms of data, right? But then in the middle of that, we also see a new aspect that assists in decision-making. Project deliverability. Just to give you an example, if a project was budgeted for right-of-way and we're looking for construction dollars, one of the things that might be looked at, for instance, is in terms of deliverability, we might ask the question, how's right-of-way being purchased? Is it almost completely purchased? That may be a factor. So again, ultimately, evaluating projects in this manner helps us have a more predictable program and focus our efforts on delivering projects effectively within available resources. So I haven't said these things. Does all that make sense in terms of the 10-year plan before we get into some projects? Okay, sorry I had to go through that pretty quick. I know we're limited on time, but I wanted to make sure everybody had a good overview of the 10-year plan. All right, so last but not least, 10-year plan, 1,000 to 1,100 projects, right? Evaluated. We come up with a total of 93 projects in the 10-year plan. These are the major projects, all right? Well, we can see here, I know it's hard to see on the screen, but I'll read it to you, where the yellow arrows are. Again, the heading at the top says fiscal year 24 to 26 3-year plan projects. At the top of the screen, these two projects that I'm going to talk about, give an update on. At the top. Memorial Drive, right? Sullivan County State Route 126. If you were to scroll all the way from left to right, estimated cost of that project is up there as well. What I can tell you is the estimated cost is upwards of $100 million for construction. We go over here to these columns. It kind of resembles the 3-year plan that I talked about in a way, but again, the accountability is there, right? 10-year plan, roadmap for how we're going to deliver projects. If you were to look down here with me, I can tell you Montgomery County, State Route 40 Whiting, I know it's on my reach, I just want to give you an example. Preliminary engineering, 24. Right-of-way, 25. Construction, 29. 29 is not a 3-year plan number, is it? But that, again, the roadmap mentality of taking our money, take a look at it over the next 10 years, taking advantage of statewide partnerships, taking advantage of matching funds for federally, running through the needs process. When you take a look at that, that is the expectation. That's also good for our industry partners as well. It helps them plan for the future as well. Contractors, they know what's coming, right? With a high degree of reliability, because again, we're going to be fiscally constrained. We're going to be working through these projects as we go forward. Project manager, we're going to be scope, schedule, and budget minded in terms of meeting those dates and staying within budgets to make the 10-year plan work. Again, let's go back to Sullivan County, Memorial Drive. Estimated construction year 2025. That's next year, right? So I'll get into that in just a second. And then Sullivan County State Route 93 reconstruction. We're all the way over here in the construction column again. Fiscal year 2024. We're in that right now. It's coming to a conclusion here in the fall. So let's give an update on those projects real quick. You can see here at the bottom, and old numbers here. Says roughly 105 million in fiscal year 24 and 25 in or near Kingsport, which is accurate. Okay. So let's talk about Memorial Drive for a minute. Project with a long and storied history. As Ryan said earlier, I'm in my, was it silver anniversary when you're 25th year? I've got the silver in my hair to prove it. So, about the time I started at TDOT, we were talking about this, right? Some of you in here may remember the department enlisted the assistance of what? A citizen-based resource team, helped define the concerns, the issues, needs, and goals of the project, made a recommendation to TDOT. Somewhere around the early 2010s, we went through that long mandatory environmental review process, held a public hearing, selected an alternative that not only addressed the safety and congestion needs, but also minimized impacts to the environment. That long corridor from Center Street all the way over to Interstate 81, right? Were some environmental issues that had to be looked at really closely. We got sort of a pinch point there at Yancey's Tavern and the cemetery, right? That was a big concern. Okay. But long story short, we proceeded with purchasing property throughout the corridor. But because, again, inflation, when you look at the cost of inflation, when you look at being fiscally constrained each and every year, the construction of the project is being broken up into 3 sections. The first section of which is scheduled to begin construction, construction letting around this time next year, maybe a little bit later in the summer of next year. Right? So we currently have we're well underway with right-of-way. What I can tell you is the majority of the right-of-way has been purchased. Within the month, we expect to apply for the necessary water quality permits that are needed. You have to have those before you can go to construction. And also our utility coordination with utility companies is well underway. They're laying out their plan of action as well. So we're in good shape. And so what I can tell you is a little bit about the project. The first segment will begin on the western end, East Center Street. We have 4-lane section from East Center Street to Harbor Chapel. At Harbor Chapel, it's a 2-mile-long section of the overall 8-mile corridor. At Harbor Chapel, as we kind of start to traverse up that vertical climb, that's where we'll transition down to a 3-lane section. Headed eastward, we'll have a lane each direction plus a truck timing lane that'll take us on up to Briarwood Road, and that's where we'll stop with that section. Okay. All right. So things are looking good for next year on that project, I can tell you. Now we talk about State Route 93. So this is the Sullivan Gardens portion of it. And just to give you a frame of reference again, being up here from Tri-Cities, especially for me to explain is if you were traveling from down 81 South, say from our area here, you get to exit 50. I believe that's where the State Highway Trooper office is. If you were to come off that exit there at exit 50, hang a right. That's, of course, that's State Route 93, Sullivan Gardens. Go out there a little ways. We did a project. This is the 3rd improvement of an overall series of projects, 3rd and final improvement that were spot safety improvements along the route. The first segment was completed a few years ago there as you come off the route near the school, near Fowler Lane. The second segment down near Bailey Road, Morgan and Bailey Road is I believe we're finishing construction. It's done. So this 3rd segment that Trampas and his folks are excited about goes a little further down. Like I said, it's the last portion of it. It goes from 4th Street to Derby Drive. Now in that section out there, pretty far out there a ways, there's some what we call horizontal deficiencies. There's a few little things that need to be corrected. Have a very narrow 2-lane road with minimal to no shoulders. There's some curves in there that we're going to go ahead and work on and fix geometrically. Some side roads that we're going to kind of straighten up to help with sight distance and those deficiencies. But in addition to that, there's an industrial area within this 3/4 mile of State Route 93. We see some slow moving equipment from time to time because we have these buildings right across from each other, crossing the road. We also see a lot of truck traffic through there. So in the area of the industrial area, what we're going to do is widen that thing to 12 lanes in each, 2 12-foot lanes in each direction, have a center turn lane, and also get some shoulders in there. But outside of the industrial area for the remainder of the project, we're going 12-foot lane each direction, and then a good 6-foot shoulder. So looking forward to that. This project is currently in the August of 2024 letting and ready to go. So we're excited about that as well. And that, sorry to go through that really quickly, but I wanted to get through and talk about not only our initiatives, but also talk about a few projects that are up and coming. So with that, Trampas and I will address any questions that you have. First of all, I guess my question, I'll start with the first question. Did all that make sense about the 10-year plan?